Welcome to Going Down the Line. I'm Steven from Virginia. That's Chase Gilmer, and we're here to talk Baylor football.
All right, let's get started.
Well, Baylor won in double overtime against SMU this Saturday, 48-45. Chase, what's your instant reaction to this game?
Well, I mean that was a great come from behind win. First off, we were down. What was it? 14 points with 5 minutes left in the game, and somehow we still won that game. Shows how much fight that this team has. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially on defense. Because and you and I both knew this was going to happen, but just our secondaries just got obliterated during that game. Now there were some pretty fluke plays, like for instance that very first play of the game that tipped off of LeVar Thornton's hands. That was unfortunate. But then you've got other plays like when Carl Williams didn't really like he receiver went well past him all the way for a touchdown. That's just something that can't happen. So so yeah, I was expecting our secondary to be, a little banged up performance wise this week. But yeah, I thought it was a great win, especially when you beat a ranked non-conference team on the road. That's just not something that happens a lot for this program. So this is definitely a win we should definitely enjoy.
Well, it's the first ranked road win for Baylor since 2015 when they beat the Oklahoma State Cowboys on the road on their third string quarterback with Chris Johnson.
Yep.
Um, it's their first ranked win period since the Sugar Bowl when they beat Ole Miss, and I'm trying to keep it in perspective because I think the game turned out in a lot of ways the way we thought it would. It was a shootout. It was a high scoring affair. That's what we saw coming. So I'm trying to keep that in perspective. And it's like Baylor won. They came back when they were down 14 with 5 minutes to go, which I've seen like ESPN gave them a 1.1% chance to win that game. And, for me, I think that was just a great thing to celebrate. It was their first ranked win since 2021. And, that it was the sixth ranked win of Dave Aranda's tenure with Baylor. So I'm trying not to be disappointed in the defense as much because we kind of knew that this was the way it was going to turn out when we were looking at this game early in the week.
Right. And I also thought, the play calling on offense was good. It wasn't great, but it was still good nonetheless. Because, there were some plays, especially around the very beginning of the game, where we would just continue to run it up the middle on first down. And I'm just like, why do we continue to run this when it's not working? But I think Spavital realized that, today just wasn't going to be that day for us to get the run game going. Now, albeit we still finished with over 100 yards rushing, which is good. And they did rush a little bit better in the second half. But just, I think he started to realize in the first half, maybe we're going to have to probably pass a little bit more, which is fine. It would just be great for us to establish the run. But that all starts with how our offensive line does. Now, Colton Price got hurt in the second half, but I forgot which Siraki twin it was. It's the younger one, right? It's Colton Siraki. I think that's his backup. He was actually phenomenal coming in once Price got hurt. Um, but yeah, this like I said, play calling was good. It definitely needs to be better, but it was still enough for us to win. But I also do want to say Sawyer Robertson needs to get a lot more respect nationally. He's leading all college football right now in passing yards with I know it's over 800. I don't know the exact number, but 800 over 800 passing yards, 7 touchdowns against 2 Power 4 opponents. He's the only team that's played he's the only quarterback that's faced 2 Power 4 opponents so far, and he's putting up those numbers. Man deserves his flowers, man.
Oh, for sure. And I think Sawyer and the wide receivers have been the brightest of the bright spots of the season. I also think the offensive line is a really great pass blocking unit. I think there were a lot of times that Sawyer had a good amount of time to throw and make decisions. But yeah, I am concerned about our ability to run the football, and I think that kind of starts up front.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also do remember there was one specific play call where it worked. It was 3rd and 10, the last offensive drive before overtime started, where he had Bryson Washington run the ball. Somehow that worked. I was like, my gosh, that was I remember looking at my dad, who he and I went to the game together, and I remember looking at him. I was like, man, that is a ballsy play call right there. That's just not something that I was totally expecting. And to be honest, I don't even think SMU's defense was really expecting the run. So yeah, I think that was definitely the right play call then.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of Jake Spavital's offense is centered around running the football and getting the run game going. And we're going to have to do that at some point this year. Now, we played two of our toughest opponents early in the year, so I'm hoping it only gets easier from here. But at the same time, we have not run the football well, and we have not really stopped the run particularly well. And those are two things you're going to have to do to win football games. I do think this team is shaping up to be almost a mirror of what some of those Art Briles teams were, where there's a lot of offense and not a lot of defense. And that's going to be an exciting brand of football to watch because there's going to be a lot of points, there's going to be a lot of fireworks. But I don't think, as much as Baylor fans have said this is what they want high scoring, they want exciting games. I just don't think the fan base has reacted that way in the first two games of the year. And part of that is losing a game, right? But at the same time, I feel like this is the style of football we've all been kind of craving for. And I'm just going to be grateful that Baylor took its two toughest opponents to the wire and is 1-1 afterwards.
Right. And like we said last week, Auburn is definitely a lot better than we thought. I mean, they're ranked now. So I mean, that's not something. It sucks to lose, but it's nothing to be, too upset about because I mean, like we said last week and like we said in the week prior for the beginning of 2025, we all expected Auburn to be better. So that's you can't be really too upset about losing to a team like Auburn. Um, Defensively, yes. I mean, things definitely have to get better. So I can understand where a lot of fans are coming from when it comes to that. And I also do agree, the offensive line just needs to play better. It was great seeing the special teams perform better after a pretty bad week one. And I mean, like, heck, I mean, we had the game winning field goal in double overtime. So anytime where you do that, it's like, yeah, special teams going to be better. It wasn't perfect because I remember there was that one kickoff we had out of bounds in the first half, but still, it was a lot better than the first week. I do want to say this though, because since you alluded to it, as far as the how the fans are reacting right now, because I have seen a lot of Baylor fans, even with the win, just not be happy about it because I remember seeing people just say, "Oh, don't let this win distract you. That Arena's not a good head coach." Come on, what? I understand that there are some issues with the defense that needs to be better with the defensive head coach. I understand there are some inefficiencies with the offense that needs to be, figured out. But can we just enjoy a win for once, especially when it's against a team like SMU, who was ranked? We played them at Gerald J. Ford Stadium on the road in Dallas, and we come out with a gritty win, such as the one that we played on Saturday, and yet we still want to complain about it? Come on. We need look, 2025 may go south. Still a chance because we're only 2 games into the season. But this is where we need to enjoy those wins, especially when it's against a tough opponent like SMU. Because Who knows if it's going to happen again? Heck, Baylor could lose all their games from here on out. And you want to complain about their one win? Come on, guys. You need to be better than that.
Well, and I certainly think that part of this is that when you run an up-tempo spread offense, you're always going to allow some points. Part of this is that we've had some key injuries on the defensive side of the football. And part of this is we also have some transfers and some young players playing in important positions. So I'm really on your side with this. Like, I think that the defense hasn't been as good as we thought it would be, but that doesn't mean it's time to pack it in and call it a season. And I certainly think that I'm not ready to be a Dave Aranda's on the hot seat again guy, especially after a ranked road win, which it's been 10 years since we got one of those. So I'm really ready to kind of, woo-saw and calm down the loud kind of noise outside in the fan base. That really, I think there are some fans that are still upset about 3-9 and 6-7, and I'm not sure what it's going to take for that to go away. Even if Baylor goes 8-4, 9-3 this year, I feel like if they get off to a rough start next year, that we'll hear some of that same simmering again. But I'm just ready to move past that and to look forward to the rest of the season, because this is a good football team and this is a good football program, and Coach Aranda has been worth every penny, especially when you talk about winning a Sugar Bowl and winning a Big 12 title. I know some of that was with Coach Rule's players, but I really want to see him establish what he's trying to build here. And if it's not good enough, it's not good enough. But I'm not going to make that claim after we just won a ranked game on the road.
Right. And I think the win does show that, heck, Aranda can win with his own players. Obviously, he hasn't shown it as much as we wanted to, but the chance is still there. So, and like I said, I'm not saying that the fans don't need to complain about this team, because look, I understand that there are some things that need to be fixed. Like I said, the defense, as well as being able to run the ball better. I get that, but we still need to enjoy those wins when we get those wins, especially with a big opponent like SMU, which, albeit we've won 14 games in a row now against them. So, and we've beaten them every year since, well, not every year, but SMU hasn't beaten us since 1986. But I digress from there. The point I'm trying to make is just enjoy the win, guys. Because again, when's the next time a big win like this, a non-conference game on the road against a ranked opponent? When's the next time that's ever going to happen? I guess, maybe next year if Auburn is ranked in preseason, but still, who knows when that's going to happen?
Right. And I certainly, without looking forward to that game too much, I don't like our chances in Auburn, um, especially after we will lose a lot of this senior class to the draft and elsewhere.
Well, hey, you do know that there's that rule that's being proposed that they do the 5 years to play 5, right?
I've heard of that. I would love to see that, but I'm not sure if that'll go into effect. And that'd certainly be good for Baylor, because
Right. Well, I was gonna
we
say
have a lot of older guys.
if it does get um passed, and if it does go into effect next season, that means guys like Sawyer Robertson would be eligible to play.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not I'm I'm not holding out hope for that. I'm just saying there is a chance that if it does get accepted, that guys like Sawyer Robertson or Michael Trigg, if he wants to, which I think he'd be crazy to not take the NFL opportunity after this
I
season.
think the same thing
Or
about Sawyer, to be honest. I think the best thing for Sawyer
well,
and
yeah,
for Baylor would be that he is in the NFL next year.
right. No, I totally understand that. But I'm just saying the opportunity is there for those guys if it does happen.
Right. So I guess now, if we're kind of wrapping up our SMU coverages, to look at the next game, Samford, and kind of the opening up of the Big 12. I think there are games on our schedule that now look more winnable, do I say? Um, like home games against Kansas State and Arizona State certainly coming up with their lackluster performances in the non-conference. Chase, is the Big 12 still there for the taking for the Bears?
Absolutely. And before I go any further into that, because I don't necessarily want to talk about Samford that much, with all due respect to them, only because we don't know much about Samford, especially with it being an FCS school. And I'm not trying to look ahead, because when you look ahead, that's not good. But with all due respect, I mean, like, I think more of that is just we would mainly talk about who appears during the second half. So, but we could definitely still talk about that in a minute. But back to what we were saying about the Big 12. Yeah, absolutely. I think the chance is still there for the taking for Baylor, and heck, even for the college football playoffs. But I'm getting ahead of myself when I say that. But I'm just saying the path to both is still there. I think for now I like to put it in 4 tiers, when it comes to this. So, tier 1 for now is obviously the ones that are, gonna contend for the Big 12 as of right now, and that's gonna be teams like Iowa State, Texas Tech, Utah. Those are definitely in that tier 1. Tier 2 is just underneath that, but could still contend for that Big 12 if things go well for them, and that's gonna be Baylor, Arizona State, TCU. I would definitely put BYU and Colorado there for now, but I know Colorado has lost a lot and they didn't look good in their first game, but I still think the chance is there for them to contend for the Big 12. Then tier 3 is going to be like those teams, maybe not necessarily contend, but will still have a decent season. And I'm going to put, Kansas State, um, Houston, Cincinnati, um, oh gosh, what was the
Kansas?
Kansas? Yes, thank you. Yes, Kansas. And heck, Kansas could still contend for the Big 12, but man, Kansas State is a team that I'm very disappointed with right now, just because they have not looked good to start the
Vibes
year.
are bad there. Vibes are bad there. And I
Yeah,
I think like for Kansas State, seeing them lose in Ireland, have the Johnson family fight in the parking lot, and then come back and almost lose to North Dakota and then lose to Army.
they literally lost to the team that lost to my other alma mater in Tarleton State. But with that being said, I always put Baylor first, but it's always great to see that my other alma mater is won an FBS against an FBS school. So yeah, but yeah, it's just the fact that they lost to Army. Was it at home?
Yeah.
That's even worse. That is even worse. I would
Well,
have to say.
and I think the season's not over by any stretch, but when you're 1-2 and your one win was a scrape out win, you certainly have
Against
to
an FCS
readjust.
school.
Yeah, against an FCS school, you gotta readjust the expectation level for them. I think
Yeah,
like us as other fans of other schools have to look at them now and go, wow, there's a lot not going right there. I think if you're
yeah,
a Kansas State fan, the expectations should still be the same. I think that, and I guess that's kind of a controversial take from me, and I want to explain that. So, if you're a Kansas State team that just won the Big 12 in 2023 or 2022,
22. It was the year that TCU went on to the college football playoff
right?
in the
So, if
national
you're a
title game.
team that with this coach has been able to win the Big 12 and make some noise, I think that that should always be your expectation. And I think we're kind of in a similar position because we won the Big 12 in 2021, and we look at that as kind of our expectation. I don't think that if you're a Kansas State fan that you all of a sudden start to pack it in because you've seen this. I do think that it means holding your coaches and your administration to a higher standard, and that if this season does go off the rails, there have to be real consequences for figures in that football program and for figures in that administration. Because at the beginning of the season, a lot of people thought that Kansas State could win the Big 12, and a lot of people And a lot of people thought that Avery Johnson could be a Heisman contender. And those two things are just not going to happen when you're losing to Army, and you can barely scrape out a win against FCS Northwest or North
North
Dakota.
Dakota.
So, like, I think that for the rest of us, we need to look at Kansas State as a wounded animal, a wounded wildcat, if you will. But if you're a Wildcat fan, hey man, the standard is the standard is the standard. The expectations are the expectations, and like just because you lost to Army doesn't mean that we're all of a sudden going to pack this in and call this the end of our season and let you go 5-7 or 6-6.
Right. And I don't disagree with that. It's just after you start the season ranked, you have a pretty bad game against Iowa State, which you could have won. You, like you said, scraped by with a win against FCS North Dakota. And then you lose at home to an Army team that looked bad the week prior. It's just, it's like you said, vibes there are just not good right now. Now that everything could change, I mean, we as Baylor fans know that from last year, but
Mm-hmm.
just right now, it's just things are not looking good right now in the Little Apple. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So yeah, that would be my tier 3. Tier 4 is more just I just don't see a path to them having a good year, and that's teams like UCF, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, which my gosh, that was not a good game for them. And then Arizona. That those are just the 4 teams where, and I'll give credit where credit is due with Arizona. They're off to a good start. I just don't really see them contending this year at all.
Well, and I think those are good tiers right there. And I think Arizona has Noah Fafita. He's a good quarterback, but I just haven't been really confident in their new head coach and the direction of the program. So that's one where I'm going to have to see it to believe it. To go back to your tiers a little bit, those tier 1 teams, that Texas Tech, Utah, Iowa State, those 3 teams I think are kind of in the driver's seat to win the Big 12. Now, Texas Tech and Utah will play each other in week 4 or week 5. And that's an early season test for both of them. And I
It's a
think we'll see.
travesty. It's a travesty. That is an 10 a.m. local kickoff because it's in Utah.
Oh, gosh. And,
Yeah,
I think out of those 3 teams, I think Texas Tech and Utah are the more complete teams. Iowa State has beaten some good teams. Don't get me wrong. They beat Iowa. They beat Kansas State, but everything we've seen from the teams they've beaten is telling me that those teams aren't as good as we thought. Iowa can't score on anybody, and Kansas State has had all this strife and all this, all these problems in their program since that game. And so I am ready to pump the brakes a little bit and wait till I see Iowa State really play somebody. But at the same time, Texas Tech is going to play Utah, and that's going to tell us a lot about both of those teams. And, Texas Tech with all the investments in their program, and Utah with their new quarterback and offensive coordinator, and as much as they return on defense, I think those are your clear 2 best teams in the Big 12, with Iowa State right behind them. And then you start talking about teams like Baylor, BYU, and Kansas. To me, I just think that in Arizona State, I just think that we've seen some disappointing play in the non-conference from some of those teams. Like Baylor, we were disappointed in how they played against Auburn. Kansas had a double-digit point lead against Missouri, and let it all go. And I'm just not ready to kind of. And Arizona State losing to Mississippi State in a
that was
game
embarrassing.
that was embarrassing. And I really want to say this. Arizona State won our conference last year. Mississippi State placed in the bottom half of the SEC and is a perennial bottom half of the SEC team. Now, I know they didn't have Blake Shapen for most of the year last year. I know that Blake Shapen played a very good game against Arizona State on Saturday night, but you just can't have your defending conference champion going on the road, even in a tough place to play like Mississippi State, and getting their doors blown off in the first half, down 17-0 at halftime.
Yep.
And I know they mounted a comeback, but then they couldn't complete it. And Blake Shapen threw that long pass to complete a touchdown with under a minute to go. I just really disappointed. And to
And then
kind
it
of circle
immediately throws an interception their next offensive play.
right. And I think that to me spoke volumes about the competition level that Baylor is playing this year. And I am more confident about that. We both marked that Arizona State game a loss when we did our season preview issue. But
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to lose to that football team at home now. I got to say that, that may be a high scoring game, but I also even doubt that to a degree. I know our defense hasn't been that good, but Sam Levitt did not look good against Mississippi State. I had eyes on most of that football game, and I was very disappointed in Arizona State. So, Arizona State, Kansas, they've all lost big non-conference games, and I'm just very iffy on how tough the Big 12 will be for the Bears going forward. I know we're going to play Utah, and that's a game that I probably mark as a loss, but at least from where we're sitting right now. But I don't see a lot of other games on this schedule that I'm marking a loss. I think when we got out of that Auburn game, I was very, this could go 8-4, 7-5 real quick. But after watching the rest of the Big 12, man, I'm feeling a lot more confident. I just need to see the Bears run the football a little bit better.
Not to get ahead of myself, but Arizona State's secondary does not look all that good, and that makes me feel pretty good about Sawyer Robertson having another 400 passing yard game. But what I did want to say is that there's a really good chance. Now, not saying it's gonna happen. I'm just saying it's a good chance that Baylor goes on a 5-game winning streak going into the TCU game. It could happen. It might not, but it could happen.
Well, and if 6-1 going into you, that would be a huge game with huge implications. And I think some people would have to eat a lot of crow on the things that they've said about Coach Aranda. And I also think
Same.
I think that Auburn is a really good football team. I think Auburn is probably going to go to the playoff. And if Baylor is 10-2 or 11-1 and their one loss or their two losses are to, Auburn and TCU or Utah, that team is probably going to a Big 12 title game or the playoff or both. So I think it's a lesson in all of us in that the early season is the early season, but it's not the end all be all. So I think, we can learn a lesson from maybe how we all overreacted or reacted in general to the Auburn loss.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the Big 12 is going to have one team in the college football playoffs, but I mean, for now, but it's not as bad as what the ACC has shown, especially last week. Man, the ACC had a bad week too.
Well, the ACC had a bad week, and I don't think the ACC has looked that good for a couple of weeks now. I know Cal has looked a lot better than people thought, but Stanford has looked pretty bad, and I know it was bad for the SMU fans. God bless them, but that was not a good loss when you're up 14 at home with 5 minutes to go. No matter who you're playing, that's just not a good loss.
It's not. When you're up by that much with 5 minutes left, that's a meltdown right there.
Right, and we just, especially when Bryson Washington fumbled the ball, I was ready to call that, and say I've seen enough, and I'm glad I didn't, because that was one of the best comebacks in recent Baylor football history.
Yeah, it certainly was. It certainly was not the best one, because obviously that one's going to be 61-58, but still a great comeback.
Yes. So, anything more you want to talk about the Big 12 before we move to picks of the week?
Well, really, just to conclude it, I still think there's a shot for Baylor to win the Big 12, and I still think there's a path for them to make the college football playoffs, especially if both Auburn and SMU keep winning alongside Baylor. But yeah, I mean the opportunity is still there. It's just for now, I just put them a tier, just a tier underneath the top of the conference, but still, path's still there.
Yeah, and we have more football to watch and more football to see before that decision is really made. So, these tier rankings that we're putting out, this is where this stands right now, but, you know, Texas Tech could lose Baron Morton, that there could be some big things that happen, but, I also think that some of these games that look kind of daunting on the schedule don't really look daunting anymore. So, are we
Right.
ready to do some picks of the week?
Yes, we are. And I got the list right here.
Perfect.
So our first game is going to be Clemson at Georgia Tech. It is a noon kickoff Eastern on ESPN. Steven, I'll let you go first. Who do you think's going to win?
I know Clemson barely beat Troy. I know they lost to LSU, but I have some confidence that Dabo is going to get the boys fired up to play here. Give me Clemson.
I'm actually picking Georgia Tech in this one.
Okay.
I and look, I do agree that Dabo has found ways to make them look good in the face of adversity, but they really have not looked good to start the season. Plus Georgia Tech is pretty much kicking on all cylinders right now. They're 2-0. They had a big win against Colorado. They had a blowout against Gardner Webb. Haynes Keene is actually doing pretty good right now over there. So I'm picking the Yellow Jackets.
Okay, there we go. Fine. We agreed on a lot of them last week, so getting off to an opposing start isn't a bad thing. We'll get to watch that game with some
I should have
execution.
picked South Florida last week, in all honesty. I was not expecting that at all.
Oh
But
gosh, that's a jewel of a pick by me.
yeah,
I'll have to save that for a
yeah.
while.
Spoiler alert: UCF is on our picks of the week again, so we'll
Okay.
have another test for that. But anyways, the next one is going to be Georgia at Tennessee. That's where College Game Day is going to be. It is a. Let me just find the game real quick. I literally just found it on here. It's a 3:30 Eastern kickoff on ABC. I'll go first on this one. Give me the dogs. Tennessee's obviously off to a good start, but you just can't bet against Georgia right now, especially with how they're rolling. I know they looked iffy first game, but they I still think Georgia's a much better team than the Volunteers right now. So give me the dogs.
I think I would feel differently about this game if Nico was still there. I know that the quarterback they have is still pretty good, Joey Aguilar, but give me Georgia as well. Georgia, to me, is the closest thing to Alabama or what Alabama used to be that's popping right now. Give me Georgia on the road.
All right. Well, glad we're in agreement on that one. So next one, as I alluded to earlier, South Florida at Miami. It's a 4:30 Eastern kickoff on the CW network. Steven, who do you have?
Oh gosh. Give me Miami. Miami looked really good against Notre Dame. They've been tested. I think part of the USF Florida game is just Florida, kind of choking it away or spitting it away really on that last drive and couldn't stop USF. USF had tried to kick a 57-yard field goal, and that was, I thought, almost suicidal for them because Florida would get such good field position and they still stopped Florida. So I think a lot of that game ends up being more about Florida than USF, even though USF has started off real strong. Give me the Hurricanes.
I am ready to get burned here, but give me the Bulls, man. The fighting Bulls, USF. I like what they're doing right now. I know that the teams that they've played with, they were both ranked. I get that, but um, I know that the teams that they have played, albeit ranked, weren't as good as we thought. But I'm buying into the hype right now. Yeah, give me the Bulls for probably the biggest upset of the year so far.
Oh gosh, and a year that's been full of USF upsets already.
Yeah. that's pretty much been the highlight for all the upsets, except for Baylor, SMU last week. But I digress on that. Next one, Texas A&M at Notre Dame. That's I just had it here. It's a 7:30 kickoff time on NBC and Peacock if you're streaming. I'll go first on this one. Give me the Fighting Irish to beat the Aggies once again. I think the Aggies will keep it close, but with it being at Notre Dame and with it just Notre Dame is more or less the same team that they were last year, that same team that went to the national championship game. So give me the Fighting Irish.
I'm also going to take the Fighting Irish, and I also like A&M to keep it close. But with this game being in South Bend, I think that's going to be a big advantage for Notre Dame. And I thought Notre Dame played well against Miami. I'm aboard the Fighting Irish hype train, man.
All right, awesome. I'm glad we're in agreement on that one too. Now the final one for your Baylor Bears going up against the mighty Samford. I believe they're the Bulldogs. Yep, Samford Bulldogs.
Bulldogs.
It is a noon kickoff Eastern on ESPN Plus. Steven, what do you have?
I have Baylor. I have Baylor big. It shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully Sawyer and the rest of the offense is out of the game shortly into the third quarter. Hopefully this is a get right game for the Bears and that they run the football really well and that ends up being what allows them to, get right a little bit and lead them into a big game in prime time against Arizona State next week. Give me the Bears.
Yep, I'm going with Baylor too on this one. I'm hoping, in all honesty, I'm hoping that, Trigg, Price, all the guys that got injured last week, I'm actually hoping that they don't need to play at all this week. It would be great to have them, but, I'd rather them to be healthy going into a very big first conference game against Arizona State. But yeah, I'm taking Baylor in this one. I'm going to go 70-7 in this one, and my hope is that Sawyer Robertson puts up 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, does not have to play a single snap in the second half.
All right, I'm ready for that. I'm here with that.
I'm just ready for the backups to play, especially at quarterback.
I would love to see some Walter White, some Nate Bennett, some Edward Griffin. I'd love to see our defense really, make a stand here, and I'd love to see them shut out Samford. But I feel like that'd be a good confidence booster for the boys. So
I agree.
With that, we'll say sick 'em Bears and later, guys.
All right, sick 'em Bears. See y'all next week.
Sick 'em later, guys.